Hey, everybody. What a pleasure being here. Dr. Tim, Dr. Steve, and we're the Ouch Doctors. Great to see you guys here today. We're excited about today's program. Before we jump into the topic of today, though, we always like to start out with our disclaimer, which is that we are not your doctors, although we are going to provide you with some knowledge, wisdom, and insight into how pain works with you and with your body and with your mind. But ultimately, if it comes down to you choosing some course of care, we recommend that you have a team of doctors or healthcare practitioners that you trust, because we are not responsible for your health. You are, and we encourage you to find the people who will help you take that responsibility in a good way. Also, join us on YouTube. We've been doing this show primarily for Facebook, and lots of you have been watching us on Facebook, and very few of you have actually watched us over on YouTube. But it's a good place to kind of develop this sense of community. So jump over to YouTube for a moment, click the little red button, and become a subscriber to the channel. That way you'll be aware of all our upcoming shows. And of course, as always, we love your feedback. If you're here watching us now, feel free to give us a little hi, give us a little wave. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Jump into the conversation if you'd like, and we could even bring you on board here if we want to. So it's good to keep this thing interactive. So having said all that, Dr. Tim, you know what I want to talk about today?
What do you want to talk about today, Dr. Steve?
Let's talk about resistance. Let's talk about why it is that there are people, in our experience, and we've had great results with people that we've finally had an opportunity to help and work with using our particular method of treatment. But so many people still kind of hang in the background, and when they hear about this thing we call pain brain or neuroplasticity, some kind of a wall goes up for individuals where they're unwilling to embrace a new idea. And I just thought it might be worthwhile because, you know, some of those people, they're watching us, right? They're here and they're listening, but they're still kind of hanging back. Yeah, sure. And so what are the elements of resistance that we face? What are we hearing from people who finally came along? What are we hearing from people about what their family members are saying? Like what's going on out there in the minds of prospective clients and even clients themselves? And I think that's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Steve. And first of all, whenever I hear the word resistance, I have to follow that up with resistance is futile. They just go together. It's like peanut butter and jelly, you know, resistance is futile. But anyway, yeah, so it's a valid question. I can remember back in my chiropractic when I was seeing patients in my own clinic as a chiropractor there was 250,000 of them there in 25 years. Yeah. But 7 out of 10 would get awesome results. Everybody's thrilled. Everybody's dancing in the aisles. 2 out of 10 would get, you know, some results, but, you know, not really all the way there. And 1 it just wouldn't work for. Right. And which ones are the ones that I stayed up all night and I couldn't sleep then because I was stressing out about it was the 3 that got either partial results or the 10% that didn't get any results, instead of the 7 out of 10 that did awesome. So we certainly don't want to get caught up with that, Dr. Steve. But it is valid to kind of go into it a little bit more deeply and find out and think about exactly why people don't embrace this. Because I think to you and I, it's in what we know, we're unique and not everybody has the research and the experience that we do. But to you and I, it's a no-brainer to look at this type of a mind-body chronic pain relief, because there's no drugs, there's no surgery, there's no going to doctors. It's like do-it-yourself pain relief. To you and I, with what we know, we have to realize that you and I are not everybody else. When they hear this, it's likely for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I think that's basically where people are coming from. What do you think?
I think that's part of it. I'm still trying to recover from you ripping the Band-Aid off of our tragic flaw, which is very, very much the reality is that we doctors, at least those of us who really legitimately care about the outcomes of our patients, we always, and I think everybody does this to some extent, we always end up concentrating on the ones that we didn't help, right? Like, you know, as a speaker, you know, when I'm on stage, and, you know, I've got 8,000 people in the audience and I get a standing ovation. And then I walk out in the hallway and one person walks by without nodding and smiling. I'm thinking, how did I offend that one person? Right? So we're insecure by nature, and that's unfortunate. But okay, I'm going to recover from from that exposure and say that I think there are a few categories of resistance. There are a few reasons why people may not embrace the concept of pain, brain, and neuroplasticity. In other words, the concept that that your pain, your chronic pain, your long-standing pain is neurogenic, meaning it comes from your nervous system, from your brain and its pathways, and perhaps to some extent psychogenic, that your thoughts are impacting the way in which you're experiencing pain. And I think one of the reasons that's such a hard sell is because it sounds like we're saying it's all in your head. And the people who are getting the "it's all in your head" message, for example, a lot of the people that we know with fibromyalgia, they've been to the emergency room in excruciating pain, and the doctor says, it's all in your head, go home. That it's dismissive. It's not descriptive of what really is going on. And I think it's being used as a way of saying it's not real.
Right. And right from the get-go, we often say this: it's not all in your head, it's not your fault, but your pain is absolutely real, and it's not your fault. It's not in your head. We've taken every chance we can to make that, but it's still hard to get for the client to kind of get that to believe that. I think you're right.
Well, let's tease this out for a moment, because, to say it's not in your head, but it's in your brain. Well, my brain's in my head, therefore that means it's in my head. So when we say it's not in your head, the distinction that we're trying to make is that it's not imagined.
Right.
Right. It's not imagined. It's not you being crazy. That's what we mean by saying it's not in your head, but it's by saying it's in your brain. What we're saying is, again, it's neurogenic. There are neurological reasons why you experience pain. And even though the pain is experienced in a body part, there's an illusory nature to that, in the same way that we talk about phantom limb pain. Phantom limb pain, when you've lost an arm or you've lost a leg, and you may lay awake nights feeling pain in the arm that is no longer there. Clearly, the pain is not coming from the arm, because there is no arm, but equally very real to you that's where it's coming from. So that's a way of having people understand that you can absolutely have pain that is neurogenic, that generates itself in the brain, and 100% experience it as coming from a body part.
Right. Right. So another way to look at it would also be, in the neurogenic model. If you're in your car and you're driving someplace, and let's say a basketball bounces in front of your car, and you slam on the brakes, and then when you stop, you feel a rush of chemicals throughout your system almost instantaneously.
Right.
And that is an acute reaction, and that's a reaction by our body to keep us safe. Right. And keep us from harm, or anybody else we might hit with the car harm. But if that just happens at a lower level, but over and over again, as is the case with the chronic pain, that's when it gets into trouble, because the body still thinks that there's a lack of safety out there in the environment. And so the brain and the pathways keep getting rewired with chronic pain, etching it into the nervous system more and more chronically. Right. That's where it becomes a problem. And there's a lot of reasons that can devolve to that. One can be a lot of things, just old trauma, childhood trauma, present level of stress, anxiety about the future, a myriad things. Personality types can set this up. The person is always that is afraid of confrontation. I mean, that's kind of like me. I don't like confrontation, and that personality type can actually predispose one to mind-body chronic pain.
So the first area in which this resistance can arise, we're saying, is just in a refusal to believe that the nervous system can create pain, and that it's not all in my head, right? I think another reason that we see resistance is that for many of the people that we ultimately end up working with, they've been through everything, right? They've been everywhere. Now, this is not new to us, because as chiropractors, we're often the quote unquote last resort for certain kinds of pain. People have they've taken every drug. First, they took the non-prescription drugs. When those weren't strong enough, they took the prescription drugs. When those didn't work, they tried a different prescription drug. When that didn't work, they went to the orthopedist, who said, well, before we contemplate surgery, we'll send you to the PT, we'll stretch you out a little bit. When that didn't work, they started thinking surgery, and when that didn't work, they ended up in our office, right? And now we're saying we're now getting people who have been through all of that, plus the chiropractor, perhaps, because there is another layer, another level to the healing process that none of those other things address, right? None of those things, regardless. You could say, well, I've been everywhere, I've done everything, but if you haven't done something about the neurogenic element of pain, then you haven't done everything yet.
Right.
And if you haven't done everything yet, then there's that moment where you've got to decide, is there something I haven't tried? Is there another way to go here? And I think one of the ways in which people get resistant is thinking, I've done so many things and nothing's worked. And every time I tried something new, I had to get my hope up. I had to feel hopeful, and then my hopes were dashed.
Right. And I think that's half of it, that they're afraid to kind of get into something else that they'll fail at. But the other half of that you just brought up is why they're thinking to themselves, well, why haven't I heard this on 60 Minutes or on the news? Or why don't I know about if this Mindbody stuff works and and this is true, why haven't I heard this before? Why didn't my doctor tell me about it? Why haven't I heard about it on TV? Why? So
that's kind of a third reason, right? So the first reason is this whole concept of my nervous system is causing my pain. That sounds preposterous, right? The second reason is this sense of I don't want to try something new because I don't want to have my hopes dashed yet again. And the third reason is a lack of credence. It's gosh, I can't imagine that if this is logical and real, that my doctor wouldn't have already told me about it. Yeah. So there's that credibility issue. And now we've got Eric over here. He's got another reason. He says money, right? That people have spent so much money.
Too. Now, maybe this is what Eric means about the money issue. Yeah. But okay, so people have gone to these huge hospitals where all the money is and all the expensive diagnostic tests and all the expensive doctors and all that stuff, and they haven't gotten better there. They go to the physical therapist, they go to the chiropractor, they go everywhere to be treated. They spend all this money with everything out there, but so they haven't heard of Mindbody chronic pain relief, and we don't inhabit a huge hospital or have flashy $1 million diagnostics or doctors or anything like that. How can this help me? How could this possibly help my chronic pain? So I'm not sure if that's what Eric meant by the dollars, but there is no dollars in this. There's no drugs to sell with chronic mind-body pain. There's no hospitals. There's no diagnostic tests. There's no nothing. It's really kind of do it yourself once you know how to do it. So there's no money involved. Nobody's getting rich on it. Maybe that's why nobody up till now has been telling you the total truth about chronic pain.
Eric says money for docs, and I could see that. I could see that idea that certainly we had that experience as chiropractors that the AMA sort of protected its turf to some extent. Right? It protected the turf. It's like, well, let's keep this whole thing like on the down low because it's not something that we're going to have a payday about. Certainly the pharmaceutical companies too. Like the pharmaceutical companies are vested in the idea of creating the next new drug that's going to make them a lot of money, that's going to help get rid of the pain. And some of those things work for a short period of time.
Right.
But it doesn't matter how many fancy tests you do or how many fancy approaches you take if they're the wrong one. Right. Sure. And so, we're just saying that this other way of going about it really speaks to this idea that if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
Right. And what we're saying is, this is not a nail. And I don't care how many different kinds of hammers you use to pound it in, it's not going to do the job because your problem has to do with your brain. That's clearly where chronic pain comes from.
Instead of hammering the nail in, we need to pry out the nail. And that's kind of a metaphor for kind of do-it-yourself psychogenic mind-body chronic pain. One of the things, and as you're telling that story, Dr. Steve, I remember back in my practice days, and I had first heard of John Sarno.
Yeah.
And when I heard someone describe that to me, I think he had written his first book with Healing Back Pain or something like that.
Right.
I was like, don't eat. Are you crazy? There's no way that's valid. I totally discounted that whole thing. I didn't even want to put it in my mind to confuse my little chiropractic brain there. And I'm not saying that chiropractic is not awesome, because I get adjusted. I get checked every week. I think that everybody who has a spine should get their spine checked, if not once a week, every month throughout their entire life, just to be on your optimal game, but not necessarily for chronic pain relief. Without mind-body care, it's destined to not work as well as it could. So as part of your wellness plan, absolutely. As part of a treatment for chronic pain, without this mind-body care, I think it's lacking too, just like drug therapy and physical therapy and a lot of the other things too. Unless you embrace mind-body care, everything is destined to be not so great, in my opinion.
Well, that brings up the whole idea that, and I think you also raised one other objection, which is it sounds too good to be true. That's the other objection people raise. But I think, from a very holistic standpoint, we are not just a body. We are not just a mind. There is an interaction between the body and the mind. There's communication that occurs between the body and the mind. And, as chiropractors, our job was to remove interference, that might arise as the brain was sending a signal down through the spinal cord and out to the body. But there are blockages of signals and disruptions of signals that occur even before you get to the spine, that happen way up in the cranium, in the brain. And those same nerve pathways need to be the interference or the reliance on certain pathways, or the neural networks that are being formed that are promoting pain, need to be dealt with at that level. So you can't, because we're ultimately we're energy, right? We're pure energy. And so from an energetic standpoint, we all have the capacity to heal. We all have the capacity to overcome pain. This is reality. This can be done, but we get so caught up in the sense of futility and the lack of the lack of hope that we are willing to look at these things as being impossible. And the last one that occurred to me from what you just said was what I call the hypnotic aspect of this. The hypnotic aspect is that when I hypnotize people on a stage, I could hypnotize somebody and tell them you're stuck to that chair. And they could do everything they want to do to try to get out of the chair. They won't be able to get out of the chair because they're operating based on the expectation that they can't get out of the chair. Mm-hmm. Their belief system is so strong that they can't get out of the chair that, you could give them a crowbar. It's not going to get them out of the chair, right? You could give them crazy glue dissolver. That's not going to get them out of the chair. Anything you try to do is not going to get them out of the chair because their belief system is stronger than anything else you do. And that's what we're dealing with, that people's belief system is so strong that this has got to be something in my body that I can medicate away. And anything else, it's filtered out, right? And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a lot of, my view is that we're all hypnotized. We've all been programmed to believe certain things. And if we could only wake up from that hypnotic trance, then we're free to look at options that we weren't looking at before.
Right. It's fascinating stuff when you bring up your stories about hypnotism. It's awesome. One other thing that I think, maybe back to your first point about it's all in your head.
Yep.
Some of the resistance also might lie in people just don't want to self-examine that part of them because of the stigma about mental illness out there. Does that mean I'm mentally ill? So they just automatically not going there, don't want to deal with that too. I don't feel safe doing that.
That's a great thing to bring up, because I think, especially in the world that we're living in now, there's brain doctors and there's physical doctors, and never the twain shall meet. Because if you've got a brain problem, then you got to go to the brain doctor, which means there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your brain. If there's something wrong with your body, you go to the body doctor. And here we are, we're saying, no. We're not the brain doctor, we're not the body doctor, and there's nothing wrong with your brain. Your brain's doing exactly what your brain was designed to do. Your brain was designed to learn And unfortunately, it's learned certain patterns that produce the experience of pain. But the bad news is the good news, because if your brain was capable of learning pain, it's also capable of unlearning pain.
Right, right.
Okay, I heard,
an awesome book by Howard Schubiner, MD, Unlearn Your Pain. It's a workbook.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
We got a comment from Eric. I haven't read it all yet, but it looks like it's a good one here. It says, used to think in the self-development space that all of us could only be successful and make tons of awesome money only if we attend all of these events, read all the books, and buy everyone's program. But I truly believe that we all have the capacity to believe in our own body, mind, and spirit. So it's, again, that's a great point, Eric. It's like relying upon the inner experience, right? Wake up every day, morning, meditate. These 4 principles: health, wealth, abundance, and energy. So what are you doing? You are using the principles of neuroplasticity to train your brain to essentially attract those things, because we do attract that which we think the most about. Those things that we embrace, those things that we allow our energy to rise up to.
Right. So like what Eric's saying about that he wakes up in the morning meditating on those 4 principles. So what if you got up in the morning, you get out of bed, and you're like, oh, my knees are killing me, my back's killing me, I've got the beginnings of a migraine, the day's going to be horrible, oh, I can't even leave the house because of COVID, so I'm just gonna sit around, and then your day deteriorates from there. Actually, what you're doing is, throughout all that, is reinforcing the chronic pain pathways, and I can, without a change in programming, the next day is going to be just a little bit worse and a little bit worse, and more pathways get etched in there. Not saying that this is all like a positive thinking thing. I don't think once we've ever spoken about positive thinking, because that's got problems with that theory. It's just being aware of that reprogramming is a good possibility to reprogram away from chronic pain, and everybody has the power to do that. Every single person. I don't care who they are or what the circumstance is.
It's a very interesting shade of meaning, because again, one of the reasons that people don't embrace this, self-care model is because it implies that, it's my fault. Now you say it's not my fault, but the truth is we create our own pain and we recreate our own pain. We're not saying that you are doing it intentionally or that you're doing it consciously, but at an unconscious level, the way you're choosing to think, the way you're choosing to focus, the things upon which you are focusing are reinforcing the experience of pain. And you're not expected to know that on your own. That's why we're here, because we can direct your attention elsewhere. We could teach you how to focus and practice the art of focus in such a way that you can gradually move your attention away from that. And sometimes these changes can be very sudden too. The change of where, we've seen with some of the old pain to go methodology that I use, where we'll take somebody with 11, 12, 13 years of fibromyalgia pain, make the pain go away within 20 minutes.
Right.
It's possible, but you've got to get your brain on a new track.
Right. And another exercise that we talked about quite a bit, and it kind of reminded me of this when you were talking about, retraining, the simple act of renaming your pain. Instead of calling it pain, what if you call it fuzzy spaghetti? Well, if you get up in the morning and you say, "Oh man, my pain is so bad today," and then if your new name for pain is fuzzy spaghetti, so you get up in the next morning and you say, "Man, my fuzzy spaghetti is really bad today." Well, you know what? Even that alone is a reprogram. You can't say that to yourself consciously or just silently to yourself and not be like, "What? That's crazy." But that also reprograms some of the pathways when you call it fuzzy spaghetti or anything else too.
Right. And again, and the bottom line is, because we're talking about what's about resistance, is the reality is that there are many tools and techniques, and watch some of our other shows and we talk about some of those strategies and techniques that you can use to interrupt the way your brain is processing the experience of pain. It can be done. You can get over this. And so what I would encourage you, as we kind of end today's show, is to just guard against these few forms of resistance. Am I resisting this because I don't believe that my brain has anything to do with my pain? Am I resisting this because I feel that it seems too good to be true? Am I resisting this because it doesn't seem credible because my medical doctor isn't making me do it? Am I resisting it because I'm so beaten down by things that haven't worked that I'm afraid to try something new, right? Or am I just, am I just hypnotically stuck thinking the same old way over and over again and believing the same thing and doing the same thing regardless of not getting results? So,
or do I think it's too hard to do? Is it so, or I just don't want to go there? It's too scary for me to go into to do these, or it might take too long, or there's any myriad of different stories that we can tell ourselves. But
so with all of those, whether it's fear or concern about the effort that it might take, I just want to kind of wrap up here by saying it's worth the effort, right? It's worth the effort to empower yourself, to try something new, to take a different tactic, and all the things you've done up to this point, regardless of which creams, which potions, which lotions, which stretches, none of those things address the core issue of neurogenic pain. None of them. Right. So if you want to change, and if you want to empower yourself, and if you want to live a life where you are, as Eric has been saying, empowered to change the way you live your life because you're changing the way you're thinking and what you're focusing on, this is an opportunity to do it. We're going to encourage you guys to, set up a time to talk to us and give us a chance to find out, how we could help you make this happen. And if you'd like to learn more about our stuff, go to painstoppable.com and we will offer you a free complimentary 20-minute discovery call to talk about you, your concern, your condition, and how it can help you deal with it.
Right. And you know why it's worth it, Dr. Steve? Because you, the person listening to this, you're worth it. You're a healthy, pain-free person stuck inside some neurology that's not behaving itself. And you are worth it. And it's always, you're always worth it to break through, evolve, get to where you're really supposed to be, live the life you're really supposed to live, because no one in chronic pain is living the life that they want to live.
Touche. All right, let's wrap things up. And anything you want to say, Dr. Tim?
I want to say, train your brain.
And your pain. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.